This episode is being brought to you in part by Real-Time CTMS, a leading provider of innovative software solutions for clinical trial research sites, site networks, sponsors, and CROs. To get a free demo, visit the company's website at realtime-ctms.com and complete one of their contact forms. Hello and welcome to the Note to File podcast, a collection of interviews, best practices, and candid commentary for clinical research sites. I'm your host, Brad Hightower. Welcome to our 50th episode. I never truthfully expected to make it this far, so I really appreciate everybody who takes the time to listen and give feedback on our episodes. I truly appreciate that. Our guest this week is Alex Yant. Alex is a solutions coordinator for Slope, the industry's first eClinical supply chain management software. He works to add order, trust, and predictability to your clinical research trials so they end on time and on budget. Alex has 4 years of healthcare experience as both a clinical research professional and a direct service provider. He holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and a Master of Science in Occupational Therapy from the University of Illinois at Chicago. In this episode, we discuss the significance of diversity of experience in clinical trials, the role of sites in clinical trial inefficiency, and the complexity of managing site lab inventory. Without further ado, Alex Yant. All right, Alex, thanks so much for coming on today, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Brad. I appreciate you having me.
Where are you at? Madison, Wisconsin, is that right?
Yeah, Madison, greatest city in the world, in my humble opinion. But yeah, right in the middle of the Midwest. We got lots of research institutions, lots of activity going on here. So it's a great place to be.
Yeah, I really feel like it's one of the few parts of the country. I don't know if I've even been to Wisconsin.
Really?
So I'll have to make a trip up there. Is it cold right now?
It's funny you say that because we've had just this bipolar weather. One day it was snowing and it was about maybe 15 degrees. And this, granted, this is the middle of April, so you'd expect some pleasant weather. And then, yesterday it was 60 and slightly rainy. So it varies quite a bit. I'm looking forward to 60 and sunny, and that should be happening next week. But it varies too much for my liking sometimes.
Yeah, I hear you. We get the same here down in Oklahoma. It's hot one day and it's cold the next. I'm ready for spring, ready for true spring weather.
Exactly. Yeah, the true spring where that you can wake up and feel confident, like I can wear shorts and a t-shirt today. Thank goodness.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. So I like to start every episode pretty much the same. I'm real curious and interested to hear people's kind of backstories into what brought them into clinical research. Again, it's so many people fall in accidentally. I feel like it's starting to change a little bit over time. And I feel like if I, can say, I think you're still relatively young in a clinical research career, it looks like. I'm kind of curious to hear how you fell in and kind of bring us up to where you are today.
Yeah. I would say all those things are very accurate. I know that a lot of people that gravitate to these fields were biology majors and chemistry majors or something really with that hard science background, and I kind of consider myself, and I think it's an advantage to a certain extent, is that I grew up really with a liberal arts background, and I got my scientific training through my master's degree over in occupational therapy, but I started from University of Wisconsin-Madison. Go Badgers. I started with a journalism and communications background, so I really like to write and have good conversations. And I think that not only being here right now and having this conversation with you, but just having conversations throughout the industry on how to best practices, how to get patients enrolled for trials, and how to kind of move the field forward, is very important. So you got to have both the technical knowledge of how things should happen, but also the communication skills and the desire to want to communicate so that we can really be advancing to the next step. It's not just about advancing the treatments, but advancing the ways in which we advertise the treatments and how we talk about them.
Well, I think if you're in clinical research, it's more than just the science. And that's where I love that, that you sort of point that out early on, because I think I've seen that be a problem across, especially large academic institutions. People with science backgrounds or purely clinical backgrounds coming in, especially at the site level. And I think it's not great to have that sort of homogenous group. You do need people who can talk and educate and kind of have those other more soft skills in the field. So I just love that you kind of touched on that early. So sorry to interrupt you there.
No. That's great. And I think, diversity comes in so many forms. And I've loved working with, a diverse array of people with, different backgrounds. Again, I've worked with a couple of people that have this, communications, soft skills backgrounds. And I've worked with people that have worked all over the country. And I think when you put all those people in a room together and say, how are we going to approach this problem? Some of the biggest problems in our industry, patient recruitment, being able to communicate what's going on and, more than just the ICF, being able to get patients comfortable with going on trials, being able to help sites and help sponsors navigate this landscape that's fraught with difficulties and potential communication breakdowns as to, spoiler alert, and my company Slope is working a lot with inventory management things and making sure that kits and supplies are arriving when they need to, and being able to alleviate those anxieties and initiate those conversations as well. That kind of the wide gamut of things that come up unexpectedly. I think, again, diversity, having the right skill set and having the right people that want to push things forward is just so important.
Yeah, no, again, I could not agree more. It really takes a village, right, to get through these trials. It's a constant challenge. So no, I'm with you there 100%.
Yeah. So yeah, I worked at, the site level for just to kind of go a little bit more into my background, because you had alluded to the fact that I would say I have 4 to 5 years of experience in the healthcare field. Part of that was being a direct service provider as an occupational therapist, working with clients directly, and then working for, about 2.5 years now in the, what I like to call kind of the administrative behind the scenes work, where I'm communicating with other practitioners, but not, getting hands on patients. And I think that really, one thing I want to touch on before we go on is just the value that hands-on work provides. Like I know that, of course, a lot of researchers kind of come in with that research mentality and wanting to, they've got their data science background and they don't necessarily they didn't come in being a nurse, or they didn't come in being a physical therapist or whatnot. But I also think that having that, again, going on the diversity of experience, having that background where you can actually, what it's like when you are working with a patient, you've read their chart, you've seen, what they've experienced and what they've gone through, having that kind of frame of reference in mind, and then seeing, unfortunately in our industry, we're calling them subjects, we're calling them patients. There's sometimes, it seems like kind of a barrier between that human element that is very prevalent in when you're directly working with that person. But I use my direct service provider hat. So when I see like, this is patient, 1, 2, 3, 4, I try to be like, I may not know that person's name, but I try to like put a name and a persona to that person and say, this is a person with a family. This is a person that is probably worried about their outcome and what this trial is going to do, because there are so many unknowns. But being able to put that compassion and put that empathy into, this person just wants to get better. And if I was that person in their shoes, I would just want to get better too. And this isn't proven, but there's a lot of good research that could, move everything forward. They could get better. And then, the sponsor would be one step closer to being able to marketing a drug that could be helping other people after FDA approval. So trying to make, a win-win-win for all parties involved.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important experience to bring to the table, especially now when there's a lot of very tech-heavy companies sort of and solutions kind of trying to come to the market with the whole DCT movement. Having conversations with basically software developers they've never seen a patient in their life. They have no idea how that stuff works. But, on the flip side, I've always sort of said, my cheesy little gimmick is that like clinical research is too clinical sometimes. It's not just data collection. It's sort of, I think, can be seen that way unless you have seen patients and you know what it's like. But yeah, these, like you said, these people are complex. They have lives. They're in pain. They may be suffering from, whatever disease state they're in for. And then aside from that, they're taking care of family members and going to work every day. So I think, again, that sometimes that can get sort of easily lost in the conversations that we have about, clinical trial participants.
Yeah. And just, one more point that I wanted to make for it. I think it's understanding what is our product, but who is our client as well, or our multiple clients. There's so many stakeholders that are involved. And, I think, as a site's responsibility, it's that accurate data to make sure that, when the sponsor is going for FDA approval, of course, that they are able to present a case as to the efficacy of a drug, but really the data you are, of course, gathering from the patient itself. And so you have an equal responsibility to the comfort of that patient and to the wellness goals of that patient. So you can be gathering the data ethically and responsibly.
No, I agree. I think that's still a problem, is that that isn't really very well aligned right now. Most of the way clinical trials are set up is for the ease of the CRO or sponsor, not for the ease of the patient, or even by extension the site, right? Which is, the site's still sort of an intermediary in the process, but ultimately your patient, should be your priority, right? And we're still not there yet.
Right. 100%.
Okay. Well, yeah, so tell me a little bit about your time at this site level. I'm kind of curious to hear. It sounds like it was maybe more of a administrative role. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So when I was looking for that kind of administrative behind the scenes role after trying to transition from the direct care role I was in before, I happened upon a role, and it wasn't called clinical research coordinator. So I was initially thrown a bit. It was called protocol activation coordinator. And I wasn't sure exactly what that meant, and, kind of came to understand that it was in the realm of, research coordination as commonly practiced, but specifically focusing on kind of the project management that's involved when a trial comes to, or when, a sponsor brings up a trial at your site and the rest of your team approves it for activation, getting everybody on board, the finance team, getting the research team on board so that they know what this entails, how many patients we might be enrolling. I was kind of the glue, along with my manager, of course, to kind of make sure that all those steps, regulatory was involved, of course, all those steps were accomplished, and that they were accomplished in a efficient manner, so that, again, keeping all parties happy, we could open the trial, everybody knew what they had to do, all the boxes were checked, and we could be enrolling with all of my team feeling comfortable on how operations were happening. So I dealt a lot with activations, and then, of course, amendments are always going to be cycling in. So when an amendment came through, talking to all parties involved, whether it was our nursing unit that was designed to assist specifically with the rigors of difficult protocols and, collection times, PK collection times and whatnot that can be kind of restrictive, talking with them, talking with regulatory, talking with our finance, just to, again, get those problems solved as quickly as possible so we can get that amendment up and running, educate the patient, get them signed off, and then just keep the trial operating as it was. So it was a very challenging role, especially, coming into it, knowing patient charts and knowing how to be designing, health interventions, but not as much being versed in the world of CRAs and in lab manuals and whatnot. I could take some of my prior knowledge and some of my experiences and translate them over, but I'm also very grateful for, the people I worked with at the site level for being patient with me as I was asking a ton of questions and saying, how does this work? Well, what do I need to write a note to file for this? Can you give me, I have a writing background, but of course, things like that are so specific, and there are these guidelines, some unwritten. So a lot of back and forth as to how to do that properly and store it properly. But anyway, it took a long time to get really comfortable and feeling like I was a subject matter expert. But looking back, it was a fun journey.
Yeah, that's a few things about that strike me. One is that I think it's, as much as I complain about sponsors and CROs being siloed, oftentimes sites have the same problem with, that fragmentation that exists. And it occurs to me that there's a lot of different models of how sites run. And even that, can make a big difference. That role that you were, serving as, it sounds brilliant, especially if you're working in a place where there's, one person is managing feasibility while another manages contracts and budgets, while yet another manages the IRB submission. Then you get to the actual study coordinator who's doing the clinical work. And if none of these people they're in different departments, or if some are centralized and some are offsite somewhere else, that can become very challenging, right? I think that must be a very difficult role to come into kind of from the beginning, because you really have to have at least some knowledge of like the whole picture so you can help be that glue. So that's interesting, and probably was a very quick education in the clinical trial process for you. I imagine you kind of probably had to learn a lot very quickly to be able to be effective in that role. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd say that. And I'm grateful that we had a great onboarding manager that kind of took, because I was hired with quite a few other individuals. I was the only one that was kind of in this protocol activation space, and the rest were in more of a standard clinical research coordinator space. But we had, a training session where we were able to kind of learn the ins and outs and be able to kind of work. We were encouraged to, of course, work with each other, share our own experiences. It was almost kind of like being back in college for a bit. We were, quizzing each other, establishing ourselves in the fundamentals of GCP, and being able to, quiz ourselves as to what does 21 CFR Part 11, Part 11 compliance mean. So it was a learning experience that could have been daunting, but turned out to be a lot of fun. And I think that's when I talk with people who are interested in clinical research, I like to discuss on how there are a lot of moving parts and nothing really ever stays consistent. However, what could seem like something that is scary, where you never will kind of feel like you obtain that subject matter expert perspective, just kind of with time and not casual, but with time and with steady effort, you will find that you'll grow way faster than you expect. And then when you kind of do feel like you've attained that level and can speak to things in a more nuanced aspect, it's so rewarding knowing that your knowledge is directly contributing to potentially the next generation of treatments for a wide variety of, illnesses and conditions. So it's definitely worth the effort.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I do think, to speak to your point about, becoming a subject matter expert, I feel like, and again, I may be wrong just because I've been doing this for so long now, but I do feel like it does, this takes like a uniquely long time to like really learn the nuance, because you almost never see the same thing twice. There's so much differences and lack of consistency, even in how studies are presented or the processes may go. I think sometimes, again, it feels like it takes a long time to really get your arms around how it all fits together. So I think that can be initially discouraging for people, especially to go back. You were mentioning quizzing each other on compliance and 21 CFR 11. Those sorts of things sort of get like the brunt of like research training, but not always like how to do stuff, right? I mean, compliance and GCP is one thing. Of course, it's important, but then like, how do you create your own source doc from an ECRF guideline, or like how do you negotiate a budget or do these things? And sometimes that's, I think, lacking in sort of the clinical trial training or education, especially again in universities where I've seen coordinators struggle because they don't understand that. But again, I think because of those reasons, again, it can take a long time to really figure out what the heck you're doing. But again, once you do, and the picture kind of all fits together for you, I mean, you really start to understand the importance of what it is we're doing and why everyone's, trying their damnedest to sort of get rid of all of these inefficiencies.
Absolutely. No, I think, obviously every sponsor is different. And then when you throw CRAs into the mix and they are used to working with different processes, you kind of got to learn them and develop, going back to what we were originally talking about, develop relationships with them. And then, I think the first time that I was supposed to set up a monitor visit and they said, okay, time for source data verification. And I kind of gave them this blank look like, oh, yeah, I definitely know what you mean there. And then, but also talking about what you said earlier about taking a village. I think the clinical research community, it's, small to medium sized, but it is such an inclusive group. And so if you have a question, I don't think you're going to get a side-eyed like, oh, you should know this already. People are picking each other up and saying, oh yeah, that's what this means, just so that you can continue on with your day. Because we're all in for the patients, right? And that's one thing that I've really enjoyed about being here and why I'm excited about the future of clinical research and my involvement in it.
Yeah, so your involvement in it today is with Slope. Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm curious to hear. I know I had talked to Ethan. It's been probably almost a year ago.
I think it was August 2020. So it's almost been two.
Wow! I'm surprised I've been doing this long. The time flies when you're having fun. But I know There's been some changes. I know you guys have gotten some big rounds of investment, and maybe, there's been probably some really exciting times. I guess kind of tell us about what you do at Slope, and maybe even a little background on what Slope does.
Sure, yeah. So Slope, yes, it has changed a lot since August 2020. And so we are an eClinical supply chain management solution. And the whole idea for us is we want to make your trials as boring as possible. And when I first originally was pitched that idea of boring, I was like, what boring? What? That's such a pejorative. Like, well, you don't want to ascribe anything the status of being boring. But with further reflection, it makes a whole lot of sense. Like the things that we've been talking about, there's a lot to learn. Everyone's running at a frenetic pace, just trying to get everything done. All of the coordinators, the PIs that are managing like 20 to 25 trials, just trying to get everything done at the end of the day, but also taking care of their patients. So actually, in that context, boring is exactly what we want. We want better data. We want fewer mistakes. We want like one tool to be able to deal with inventory and to be able to see all of our samples where they're going at every step of the way, rather than trying to compile all of our requisition forms on paper and compiling shipping responses from FedEx and UPS to try to stitch together where everything is and just hope that it arrives on time and in good condition. And so Slope tries to solve a lot of that. We have this full-fledged tool that works on a web browser, so you can access it anywhere, and it allows you to really create digital twins of all of the inventory that exists at your site. And you can ascribe inventory alerts to it, ascribe expiration alerts to it, so that you're never going to have a patient coming to your site. Potentially, they took hours to get there just for treatment, and you'll never have to turn them away saying, oh, that kit that I knew we had a C1D1 kit that was just stored in the back of that one closet, but then we pulled it out and somebody didn't update the spreadsheet and now it's expired. You're never going to have that happen with us because we give you the tools to have full visibility and make sure that you are always on top of your supplies, that everybody can, sponsor CRO, sites. There's an unbroken chain of custody as to where everything is and how it's operating. So we want to make things boring and take stressors out of your day so that you can really work with those complex, patient-driven tasks that really give yourself joy. I'm sure most people didn't sign on to a CRC job being like, oh yes, I want to manage inventory. Like that's my goal. It's something that of course is very important, but we wanted to take a back seat so that we can help manage it and help you do your job with a little less stress.
Yeah, I mean, I can say there's nothing worse than going back to the storage room to grab a lab kit and not having one, or having one that's expired, and then having to cobble one together from, an unscheduled visit or something like that. So right. I know I love that. And especially as you hopefully scale out and grow your site or site network, whatever the case may be, I mean, that becomes increasingly complex. And then throw in something like COVID, where you may be needing to get a big lead time on, when kits are going to expire or when they're going to be used by potential patients coming in. I mean, that can be nearly impossible to manage, especially again as you become further away, sites becoming more decentralized. You may not necessarily be in there poking around every day to keep an eye on what's available and what's still within expiration date.
Yeah, and you kind of read my mind there, Brad, because I was actually going to talk about how I was acutely aware of issues because I worked at the site during COVID and when all these poor vendors were trying to get kits out with these long delay times. And I remember there's one trial in particular where we were enrolling really fast. It was really exciting. And we had all these expired kits and we were having to kind of cannibalize them and take things from one place to another. I'm sure it's a very common story that's, listeners can relate to. But then, of course, our barcodes weren't consistent because they weren't the original codes and the original components that were included because the original components had expired. So we were trying to get, of course, our patients treated ethically, be able to cobble things together from the rest of our site, and then kind of figure out what kind of, because the lead times kept changing. It was 4 weeks, and then it was 6 weeks, and then it was 8 weeks. And then one time they told us, oh, you know what? It's supposed to be 8 weeks, and we need an extra week after that. So I just remember all of our coordinators were sweating bullets saying, I have no idea how to order these things. We don't want to, of course, be further pushing back on these vendors and ordering too much because, of course, we have the responsibility to be ethical in making sure that everybody has access to what they need. But that being said, it's planning a week ahead is hard enough. And then planning 2 months ahead it was a very challenging time and made me acutely aware of the need for solutions to help coordinators be automatically ordering their own kits, having real-time data as to how many kits they're using, having sponsor input as to what levels kits and other supply inventory should be at sites. And Slope is able to help with a lot of those tasks. And we just want to make lives easier, because I know as the person that managed inventory at my site, before and after Slope, there was a huge difference. It wasn't spreadsheets in the back corner of the office that we were kind of updating at the end of the day. It turned into being able to have our own profile and being able to access this secure portal where we could see where everything was, had those inventory expiration alerts on it, single source of truth with audit trails, so we know kind of who manipulated what. So I could ask, oh, hey, I don't see this kit, and I know exactly who modified it. A lot of really helpful data to just make our lives easier and keep everybody accountable.
Yeah, and again, that's a place where you don't want to necessarily try to get cute at the site levels with the lab kits and that equipment. Like you said, trying to sort of, cobble together, it never works out right. It's always a mess. It's very stressful. But again, you need that patient safety labs or whatever the case may be. Slope is, as far as their sort of site-facing solution, that's free. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we have two kind of tiers that we're working with. If a site wants to use Slope without necessarily the sponsor signing on right away, we have what's called an independent site network, so that they can, I'm actually the one that runs a lot of the demos, so they usually would see my face. I would give them a little presentation and then help them sign up. And we say, and this is completely true, the Slope is completely free for all sites to use. There's no 30-day trial period or anything like that, because full transparency, we have, our paying customers are going to be the sponsors to whom we talk about a slightly more full-featured, more automated version of Slope that includes, these sample tracking components, being able for that automatic kit reordering, automatic supply reordering, and then being able to track where shipments are at any given time and having a couple more tools to allow more insight for all stakeholders. So we have a couple more tools in that kind of full-featured suite that we offer to sponsors that then they assign to various protocols and can give to sites that are operating in those protocols. But that being said, the free version still has a lot of really valuable tools, being able to, create your own inventory, add those alerts. So we offer that to sites for free because, again, we just want to make lives easier, make things a little less stressful. But if the sites do like what we're talking about in terms of that next level of automation and integration, we also do encourage them to talk to sponsors and say, hey, this is something that'd be really valuable to us. Can we get you on board? Can we get you connected with our go-to-market team over at Slope, of which I'm also operating in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a smart model. I mean, if you can get 1,000 sites that love your product and they're pitching it up to the sponsor or CRO or whatever the case may be, I mean, I think it's, again, brilliant. Historically, sites don't have a lot of money to throw around necessarily. So again, it's great to have that option. And then it's a great product. They're going to become sort of cheerleaders on your behalf, and we all know where the money lies. It's on the sponsor side.
Exactly. Yeah, we know that, and we've kind of created our model as such. And just another point as to flexibility. Like we don't have any downloads, as I said, because we want to make sure that IT teams, which take quite a long time, understandably so, in order to vet products and make sure that there's no risk going on, especially when there are downloads required or whatnot. We make it so that we're a web app that has that 21 CFR Part 11 compliance to put sites at ease so that coordinators can use it wherever they want to. If they're, in a clinic visit with a patient, if they're talking with a PI, because we know that coordinators aren't just sitting at their desk all day. They're active and they're moving, and that's exciting. So we want to design the product so that it was flexible for all teams involved, and especially for the coordinators that are actually using it, flexible for their use and their routines.
Have you guys looked, this may be something you don't know the answer to, but have you guys looked at like CTMS integrations and things like that? That strikes me as something that, again, would be really interesting from the site level. If I click off a visit in my CTMS, I could automatically log out a lab kit. Is that something maybe on the roadmap, or something you guys have looked at all?
That's a great question, and you're not the first person to ask me that question. I am not exactly sure what priority that is for our development and our product teams, but I'm sure, that thought has come to mind. And, being able to add value to the research coordinator's workflows is something that we always want to do. And as such, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened at some point in the future, but that's about all I can say because I don't know
Sure.
any more than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Don't not mean to put you on the spot. Just
Yeah,
curious.
no,
Just
no, no.
thinking
It's all
out
good.
loud is those are the sorts of things that that next little extra step to even go further as far as ease for the site level. I love that, and I think
Yeah.
we're starting to see more collaboration. I think between different vendors where I think not everyone's trying to rule the world, and instead they're all kind of trying to carve out their piece and work together. I think it's really exciting a time in the industry to see those sorts of partnerships start to happen. So again, just a thinking out loud on my part. So.
Yeah, no. I think everyone has their niche, and we just really want to become established in that. We're working with a lot of really complex early stage oncology trials. That's where we're really focusing on, and being the go-to niche for being able to manage their inventory. And especially when there's, so much complexity going on at that early stage, and maybe the money is not as strong as a drug that's been later developed, being able to give those coordinators and those, the sponsors a bit more peace of mind so that we can help them kind of get off the runway. And then when that study starts flying, we can scale with them and really make it a successful partnership.
No, I love it. I love it. I'd like to shift gears a little bit, if that's okay. And
yeah, love to.
Something I love to just hear from our guests is what are maybe some tools, tips, resources, maybe something you use in your everyday life to sort of make you better at what you do. I'm always such a dilettante. Like I try everything that there is, and I find a lot of joy in that. So I always like to hear from other people, like what do you use, or what's something that's sort of indispensable for you?
Sure. So I think I know I struggle with the idea of seeing something new on the horizon, saying, "Oh, this is so exciting," and then it turning into more of a distraction that it is something that's really helpful. And kind of on the vein of that, I have developed a unique way of minimizing distractions so that you can try to figure out or to just try to be able to focus and be fully present at work. I recently I tried this strategy a couple of years ago, and I've recently readopted it. I bought one of those Nokia feature phones because we're always on our smartphones. We're getting pings. Everyone has Apple Watches. Like it's just this incessant stream of information that's helpful. But when you want to get into that flow state, which research has shown is so important for being able to do your best work, those pings are just not going to get you there.
Sure.
And so what I've done is I bought a Nokia feature phone, and I've set it up where I can turn off the Bluetooth on my smartphone to kind of keep it out of the way. I forward all calls to that Nokia feature phone, and then I set my privacy alerts or whatnot. So when people text me, it says, "Oh, hey, I can't text right now. If you need to reach me, give me a call." And I put that on during business hours so that of course, if there's an emergency, there's some access. But other than that, it really fights that, or because of course on our smartphones, every company just wants our time and wants our attention. Like we are the product, and eyeballs are their monetary source. And so I think it's great for when you can, when you're not supposed to be working, when you're not supposed to be engaging, to be able to play on your phone and whatnot. But I know for myself, when I see my Nokia feature phone on the side and say, this is work time, all I have is a device that can call rather than a device that can do pretty much anything possible. It's really given me a lot of increased clarity, and I feel more engaged in the work that I'm doing, that there's not just this pinging loud thing that's on my desk. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a clinical research related tool, but has been really powerful during my work days.
No, I mean, I love that. No, absolutely does not need to be clinical research related. And in fact, I prefer that it's not, frankly. I think there's a lot of things we can bring to our industry and to our work that aren't related. Now, that's a little hardcore for me, I think, probably, right? Like I love the idea. I'm maybe more in the like Pomodoro technique, some blasts of deep work where, I try to remain uninterrupted. But to that point, I'm often the same way. I hear buzz or ding, and I'm like, oh, what's that? Let me look at that. And then 30 minutes are gone, right? So I love the commitment to it. I'd have to admit, I don't think I have the, I'm not sure if I have the commitment to go to do that, but I love it. And that works for you to, like you said, flow state. I think that's something we all sort of strive for. And that's certainly a way to help get you there, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just, trying to know your bodily patterns and how you work, and ways to, I'm really grateful for Apple that they have all these modes where you can kind of focus in and not be as glued to your smartphone as possible. But if you're somebody that has a lot of pings going on throughout the day and wants to reduce even more distractions, finding some balance, whether it be using those tools, putting it away, or having, kind of two phones in order to facilitate that, just a suggestion if anybody wants to try it.
Yeah, no, again, I do. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, Alex, where can people find you online, man?
Sure. So I'm always happy to connect with other research colleagues on LinkedIn. You can check out what's going on with Slope at our website, which is slope.io. And yeah, we are posting quite a bit on LinkedIn about conferences that we're attending and updates. Yeah, we got a lot going on, and would love it if anybody else would follow our journey. And if they want to request either a demo for, a site coordinator or whatnot, or if a sponsor that's listening to this wants to learn more about how they can get that kind of full-featured automated version of Slope that I was talking about, we would love to entertain those conversations as well. So a lot of really cool things in the pipeline.
Love it. I'll make sure that we put that contact info on our show notes on the website. And anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say just one more thing, like one more resource that I wanted to talk about, which was I read this phenomenal book recently about decision making, and it's called The Paradox of Choice. Have you ever heard of that one before?
I haven't seen that one. Mm-mm.
So I think we're bombarded with decisions in how we approach business decisions, how we approach patient care decisions and whatnot. And I've thought for a time, I was like, oh, there's so many decisions that make our lives so rich, both as, human beings as well as, clinical research professionals. How do you figure out what is the absolute best decision? Because there's so much riding on the decisions that we make. We put a lot of pressure on our shoulders, and it's quite a lot. And I wanted to learn a bit more about this. So I read this phenomenal book, and it really helps kind of figure out how to choose when to choose. If people are interested in psychology, it kind of gives us a background as to, how we experience choice, how we experience regret, how our modern condition makes it so that choice is, of course, freeing, but also kind of debilitating because there's so much of it. And so it was great perspective that I feel like I can walk into the workday and feel more confident in my choices, knowing how our brains work with that, and being able to feel like I can, know when to make choices and know how to make the best choices possible for everybody involved. So it's a great read if somebody's looking for something to read on the bus or whatnot. A lot of good research there, and just a fascinating book.
Nice. Yeah, I have to check that out. Look, we've probably all sort of experienced, analysis paralysis. It can be difficult to make choices with so much information and so many choices. It can become debilitating to the point to where, I've certainly spent more time deciding something than just doing the damn thing. And that's where things can get to be a problem for you. So no, I love that. I'll have to check that out, because I think any information in that regard, I think it could be obviously very useful, especially in the field where we work, where the stakes are pretty high, as you alluded to.
Yes. Yeah. And just the author of that is Barry Schwartz, just out of curiosity. Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll include that in the show notes as well. And that's I love that. I'm a big reader. Well, I drive a lot, so actually I'm a big listener. I do a lot of audio books, but I think it's useful to always have something on that, you can take away, learn something from. So again, I love that.
100%. Absolutely.
Well, very cool. Alex, I really want to thank you again. I appreciate you coming on, man. I think this was fun conversation.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. Thank you for letting me talk a little bit about Slope and personal journey. And, I really appreciate it. I'll continue to follow your journey as well. So this was great.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Alex.
Yep. Take care.
As always, thank you so much for listening to the Note to File podcast. Make sure to check out our website at notetofilepodcast.com. Thank you.